when Jesus declared, "Hereafter the Son of Man will sit on the right hand of the power of God." And when they asked him, "Are you the Son of God?" he said, "You rightly say that I am." They said, "What further testimony do we need? We have heard his blasphemy from his own mouth." And they led him to Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this fellow perverting the nation, forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Then Pilate asked Jesus, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered and said to him, "It is as you say." So Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no fault in this man." But they were the more fierce, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place." When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked if the man was a Galilean, and as soon as he knew that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad, for he had desired for a long time to see him, because he had heard many things about him, and he hoped to see some miracle done by him. Then he questioned him with many words, but Jesus answered him nothing, while the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. Then Herod, with his men of war, treated him with contempt, and mocked him, arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him back to Pilate. That very day Pilate and Herod became friends with each other, for previously they had been at enmity with each other. Then Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and rulers and the people, said to them, "You have brought this man to me as one who misleads the people, and indeed, having examined him in your presence, I have found no fault in this man concerning those things of which you accuse him. No, neither did Herod, for I sent you back to him, and indeed nothing deserving of death has been done by him. I will therefore chastise him and release him." For it was necessary for him to release one of them at the feast. And they all cried out at once, saying, "Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas," who had been thrown into prison for a certain rebellion made in the city, and for murder. Pilate, therefore, wishing to release Jesus, again called out to them, but they shouted, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Then he said to them the third time, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found no reason for death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go." But they were insistent, demanding with loud voices that he be crucified. And the voices of these men and of the chief priests prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they requested, and he released to them the one they requested, who for rebellion and murder had been thrown into prison. But he delivered Jesus to their will. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we share together the trial before Pilate of the Lord Jesus. From Luke chapter 23, we've read 1 to 25. Our focus today is on the relationship between Jesus and Barabbas. Barabbas was in prison for a certain rebellion made in the city and for murder. So Barabbas was indeed the kind of person that they were accusing Jesus of being, one who was sowing sedition, who was raising up an army against the authorities, and in so doing had committed murder. So here was a man who, there is no disputing, was guilty of the charges that were put against him. He had a certain notoriety. And being the special time of the year, Passover, Pilate had established a custom whereby he would release one of the political prisoners, for it really is politics that leads to this kind of rebellion to them as a concession to acknowledging that there were some nationalistic desires in the hearts and minds of the people. And again, this is exactly what Jesus was accused of doing, stirring up the people. Pilate repeats the charge, "You have brought this man to me as one who misleads the people, and indeed, having examined him in your presence, I have found no fault in this man concerning those things of which you accuse him." Pilate also needed to be able to justify his judgments, and as he had reviewed the case against Jesus, he could find no justification at all, nothing that Jesus had done, which would cause the state to be concerned about him. Jesus hadn't said, "Don't pay taxes." He had in fact said, "Pay your taxes." His attempt to get Herod to pass judgment on Jesus had not worked. Herod also had not found justification for executing Jesus. But he was not prepared to let Jesus go. He could have done that. No, having executed John the Baptist, was quite happy for Jesus to die. But there needed to be some justification, some appearance of righteousness on their part. But the crowd, when Pilate says for the second time, "I will chastise him and release him," immediately responds, "Away with this man and release to us Barabbas. We would rather have Barabbas than this man." Of course, the reason is simple. Barabbas was never going to succeed in his bids because of his unrighteousness. But because of Jesus' righteousness, there was a real chance that Jesus might succeed. Therefore, he had to go. Pilate resists this charge. Barabbas really does deserve punishment. And Pilate really wants to exert his position and release Jesus. But the crowd know how to manipulate him, and they begin effectively to riot. "Crucify him, crucify him." We're told Pilate quizzed them for the third time. What evil has he done? What is the reason for death in him? I'll chastise him and let him go. But logic was not part of their argument. He had to go, and their voices prevailed. Pilate gave in to their will and did as they requested. This is what politics is all about, knowing when to assert your mind and when to give in to the people. Because the ultimate goal in politics is to stay in power. And in fact, the other Gospels make it plain that they used the fact that Jesus was entitled to the throne of Israel as a bargaining chip against Pilate. So Pilate releases Barabbas, the one they requested, who was a rebellious, murderous person. He had been in prison. Now he could carry on his rebellion, and delivered Jesus to their will. But this, in fact, models exactly what Jesus was there for. Jesus died directly in the place of Barabbas. He died so that Barabbas could go free. But more than that, Jesus died so that I could go free. So that whatever sin any person in the whole world has committed, it will be forgiven them if they seek mercy from the God of heaven, on the basis that Jesus has died in their place. This is the whole concept of sacrifice. An animal dies instead of the guilty party, and the sacrifice of the Lord Jesus. He died in place of the guilty party, and once the penalty is paid, the guilty party goes free. Barabbas went free. We don't know whether he persisted in rebellion or whether he was converted. The point is that Jesus set him free when he died on the cross. And the gospel is that whoever believes in the Lord Jesus Christ shall be saved. We are redeemed not by the works of righteousness that we have done, but by his mercy he has saved us, because Christ died in our place.